All right, first I feel like we gotta like breathe or something. I feel like I gotta breathe. I gotta like shake some stuff out. I gotta get like weird and silly to get through this and everything because it's been a day. Okay, it's been a day. It's been a mood. So I'm just gonna get weird a little bit. I'm gonna breathe. If anyone participated in Sunday's workshop with Melanie, like and talking about breath work and really taking that time to just like, oh my God, just breathe. That's what we're gonna do right now. So if it's not too weird, even if it is, we're gonna do it anyway. But if it's not too weird, we're gonna take like a moment to like breathe. So I'm gonna count and we're gonna hold for 4 and then, or we're gonna breathe in for 4, hold for 4, let out for 4. Okay, sound good? Thumbs up? Not weird? Super weird? Doesn't matter. We're gonna do it anyway. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so when I say go, we're gonna breathe in for 4. Ready? Okay, go. Hold it. Now release. Okay. I hope that wasn't weird. I just needed to take that moment to breathe. And I'm glad I did that because I feel a little better today. So, first of all, and as per usual, I'm looking at multiple screens. But first of all, welcome. Thank you all for joining. Welcome to Building with Care AI Ethics, presented by myself. My name is Darlyze. And we have our community engineer, Camille, as well, who will be helping present later on as well. So, first of all, take a moment to settle in. Thank you for breathing with me. Grab your water, grab your tea, regardless of whatever time of day it is. I have my water because y'all know I get to yapping and I don't like to look crusty and dry. All right, so we'll be together for about, we'll keep it not too long, probably around like 70, 75 minutes. Not now. Okay. And I promise that you'll leave with something pretty concrete that not only you can use for 75her, but at work in your portfolio, regardless of what products and projects that you're building. Okay. So while we wait for a few people to drop in, I know people are still coming in. I want to see who's in the chat with us. So I saw some people were saying they're coming in from New Jersey. If you haven't put in the chat, like, where you're coming in from, let us know. But I saw New Jersey, I saw LA, I saw Ohio, I saw NYC, I saw Boston. Anyone else, definitely let us know. I want to say welcome to everyone. And as usual, Philly, Madrid. My brother's in Philly, and I know it's cold. I don't know how he doesn't. I don't know how you do it, but my goodness. Madrid. One of my friends was just in Madrid. He said it was rainy, but it was still really nice, and he had a lot of great wine. So I was really, really jealous, but that's fine. Love it for you. Want it for me. Still raining. Oh, still raining. Checking in from Chicago. It's warm today. Warm. I feel that. I feel that. Frozen out here and Mississippi. Oh, goodness. All right. So we're all somewhat in the same boat, for the most part. Okay. So I'm very empathetic to weather changes and how that can affect us and our moods. So we're going to keep it heavier topic, but still light feeling. All right. As per usual, thank you for joining CreateHER Fest. This is a safe and intentional space for women, gender expansive folks, and allies to discover, design, and deliver. CreateHER Fest exists to bridge the gender gap in tech through hands-on training in AI, AR, VR, blockchain, and all kinds of emerging technologies. So our overall goal is that you always leave with something that you can actually use. Okay, so going to the next slide, introducing who the heck am I, in case you're new, and who the heck else will be facilitating this workshop. My name is Darlyze, software engineer, but also co-founder of CreateHER Fest, serial technologist. If you were at my last workshop, you probably saw that picture of me in Peru on a freaking buggy or whatever in the desert. I like to travel a lot. I like food. I like wine, XYZ. That's pretty much the summation of me. I like to do a lot. And I don't sleep as much as I should. And that's one of my goals for 2026, to sleep a little bit more. I'll let Camille introduce herself briefly and we'll kind of like pop right into it.
So hi, I'm Camille. I'm the one joining from London. You might hear a French accent because I am indeed French. And I work as a software engineer. I'm also a community manager for CreateHER Fest, and also a big ethics advocate, which is why we're having this session today. And for more about me, I like also to sleep a lot. There's a theme going on there. And when I'm not sleeping, I love cooking. I love exercising. My favorite sport is boxing, so I try to do as much as I can. And yeah, that's about me.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. All right. So today's agenda, we'll go through this. Well, I'll try not to go too fast because I do have a habit of talking very quickly, but we're going to slow down because this is a topic I do think we should take, some time on. But today's agenda, what we'll kind of go through. Obviously, we went through our welcome and intro, but we'll talk about what even is AI. It almost feels like a buzzword at this point, and really discuss what it actually is, who's in the room. So when people are talking about AI and implementing policy and implementing these projects and products, who are the people in the room making these decisions? We'll talk about what the default body problem is. Why not you? We'll talk about that, like why you should be in these rooms and why you should consider yourself wanting to be a subject matter expert. We'll get into sort of like a whiteboard activity because I like things that are interactive. So I'll be asking a lot of questions during this. I don't want to call it a presentation. I would love to call this a discussion and a conversation. Then we'll get into an ethical risks activity with Camille, and then summary, action items, next steps. So give me a thumbs up if that sounds good for today. All right, we're getting some thumbs up. I love to see it. So, moving on. Who's in the room today? Who's in the room with us currently? Who are you? So, from your registrations, most of you said you want to understand AI ethics so you can design better projects. And then use that in either 75her or at your work or in your portfolio or any other number of projects that you want to do. That's exactly what today is for. So some of you rated your confidence as not really confident at all when it comes to seeing, what maybe is a little sus when it comes to ethics and risk. And that's okay. Some of you said I could help others think through ethical risk. And honestly, this is going to be a really great mix. So we'll treat today as sort of more of a, I would say, knowledge share. If you attended my context engineering workshop, I prefer to present the understanding that I am not an expert. No funny memes today, but just prefacing, I am not an expert. So for those who feel confident, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the chat or come off mic during discussion points. And for those who don't feel confident at all, don't feel like you can't participate in the discussion. A lot of what the discussion is asking questions. And we'll get into why asking questions is not only good for you to do, but also very useful and very, very helpful. So the flow for today, we'll kind of watch some clips from Nicole Jackson's 2025 AI ethics workshop. We'll discuss some points. We'll, converse amongst each other. We'll really get into more of like a thought exercise. And we chose this workshop one, because last year we felt like more people needed to see it. It's still relevant today. Like everything that she's saying is still incredibly relevant today. We thought it would be very useful, but also wanted to present this at this time for especially those who are participating in 75her for the ideathon and the hackathon. This is really going to get your mind aligned with creating solutions that are not only functional and not only useful, but actually ethical and good, and take the human factor into account because you are creating things for humans. All right. Excellent. Excellent. So I'm excited. So how we show up together, camera's optional. Obviously not for me, because otherwise what would you be looking at? But for everyone else, cameras are optional. The chat is your friend. So please, 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 I encourage people to ask questions in the chat, write your thoughts. If I ask a question and I'm asking for your thoughts, I highly encourage you to engage with me and with each other. These conversations are what helps the conversation around AI ethics grow. All perspectives are welcome, and there are no dumb questions, or don't feel like you have a dumb question. If you feel like, oh, I should just know this, or let me wait for someone else to ask. Someone else may not ask, and someone may also need that answer. So if you have that question, please, please, please ask. I may not know the answer, but we will work together to have a conversation at least about it. And Camille will also be super involved in the chat to help answer any questions. Improvement, not perfection. And so one thing I do want to stress is that you are not going to solve AI ethics and biases in the 70 minutes that we're going to be together. That's one, impossible, and two, not one person's job. Okay. But what we can do is align our mindsets with improving processes and continuing to have these conversations. So, like I said, this is a conversation, not a lecture. And while I do like to yap, I do hope that you will yap back with me. All right. Give me a thumbs up if that sounds good. Great, great, great. Excellent. I'm going to ask for thumbs up quite a lot in this because I want to make sure people are engaged. Okay. So, quick poll before we start. Let's warm up a little with this question. Who do you think should be most responsible? I think I forgot to actually put this as a poll, but put it in the chat. Who do you think should be most responsible for considering ethics in a project? Is it your engineers, and your data scientists, is your product, your product people, your founders, designers, researchers, storytellers, legal, compliance, leadership, or is it everyone? Let me know in the chat. Like I said, there's going to be very involved. Everyone. Exactly. Coder. Yeah, coder should definitely be responsible, but also everyone. Everyone has a part to play in the ethics of a project. Love to see it. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask for that a lot. All right. Moving on. Let's see. Moving on. All right. So before we talk about bias, we need to talk about we need to agree on what even we mean by AI. Because if we don't have a shared definition, it'll be kind of difficult to think about setting guardrails, right? So before I show you the first clip, I want to hear from you. This is going to be another time that I'm asking you to put in the chat. So sorry that you're coming in here and having to type, but I want to hear from you in your own words. What is AI? Type it in the chat, one sentence or one word, whatever comes to mind. There's no right or wrong. I just want to see what we're all walking in with. What is AI? LLM, computer simulating human intelligence, a large language learning model, computer generated predictions, math-based future of human labor. Okay, future of human labor. I know that's right. I love to see it. These are, well, the fun thing about everything that you just said is that you're all technically right? So when we're thinking about what is AI, keep those definitions in mind right before we get into this first clip. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts of what your understanding of AI is after this first clip. All right. So let's get into the first clip with Nicole of what is really AI. It'll be like 3 minutes. And let me know in the chat if you're not able to hear anything.
Here we are. What is AI? AI, and by definition, refers to systems that mimic human intelligence to perform tasks such as learning, reasoning, problem solving. And I wanted to give some examples because we use it and we've been using it. And for some reason, it in 2022, when ChatGPT came out, everyone all of a sudden said, this is AI. AI's been here, y'all. You've been using it on social media. You know this because you have a playlist on your phone from Apple Music or whatever you're using that is giving you your algorithm, right? For the music that you're listening to. That's a component of AI. And you know this because you've been using Netflix the entire time. And something that's a fun fact, fun to play with. If you go to Netflix right now and you and someone else who has a Netflix account that is dissimilar than you, if you both go there, you know what you'll probably find? That the descriptions of the movies may be completely different, but it's the same movie. That's an algorithm. That's AI. That's it learning over the course of time through machine learning, your preferences, your interactions, and evolving. We know this from autonomous vehicles and Tesla. So that's the general idea. AI is essentially, a series of systems that have different forms of reasoning that are there to mimic our intelligence to perform a task. Why is it growing? That's a more complex conversation. AI had a big explosion in 2022 because of ChatGPT. Yes. The AI is growing for a very different reason. So if you were to go to Google right now and you were to look up the term population decline, that might shock you. It is such an issue around the world that there are only 5 countries that are expected to grow in population around the globe over the next 100 years. Everyone else is declining in population. Everyone. And so as you look at that and you look at this other fun fact, I worked in healthcare for years and we were waiting for something called the silver tsunami. It's here. Baby boomers are retiring at 10,000 baby boomers a day. That's a lot of baby boomers retiring, just saying. So when you look at the population they represent in our economy, and you look at the things that we have to replace to maintain GDP, gross domestic product, yeah, it's an interesting confluence of this need for something that can take over those human tasks, do that problem solving, do that reasoning, because we don't have the human bodies to do it. And so there's an increased need for automation in things like healthcare and finance and education due to those demography changes. And that force of change now brings us here. And why does that matter to you? Because it's not just technical people who are impacted by this. We are literally seeing whole industries adopt this. If you know someone that works in customer support and they already had an IVR system, which is a virtual system for answering calls, you will start to notice the proliferation of AI tooling within it.
All right. So now that we've heard this definition of AI and the other things that you may not necessarily associate with AI necessarily, did your definition broaden or expand? Let me know in the chat. Like, how are we feeling about our definitions around what AI even is? Because I remember when I first watched this workshop, or when I participated in this workshop last year, it was hard to wrap my head around the fact that we have been basically interacting with different levels of AI for years. A lot of what we first probably initially thought about it was like, oh, ChatGPT, these LLM models. But when you're interacting with these recommendation engines and you're interacting with these autonomous vehicles and you're interacting with Alexa, hopefully no one's using Alexa anymore. I feel like we got to kick her out. But anyway, when you're interacting with these voice assistants, you've been interacting with AI for honestly longer than you think. So here's what I want you to hold on to for essentially the rest of the session. When we say AI in this workshop, we're basically meaning, and I'll go into this next slide here, what we're basically meaning is AI refers to the systems that mimic human intelligence to perform tasks such as learning, reasoning, and problem solving. So essentially, it's really great at pattern recognition, which a lot of us are, honestly. And so when we're thinking about AI, think about that. So here's the wild part, right? That single idea, I would say, explains almost a lot of the interesting things about AI, but what can be potentially harmful. So the wild thing, there is an AI researcher, if anyone's familiar with her, her name is Karen Howe. She's an AI researcher, but also an AI journalist as well. She pointed out in her book, which I will also share at the end of this workshop. I wasn't aware of it before ChatGPT. That's okay. We're going to be hella aware of it now, especially now in 2026. But Karen Howe points out that 75% of longstanding, well-respected AI researchers think that we don't even have the techniques yet to recreate human intelligence in computers in general. Like, we're not even close, right? But the story that gets told is that it's basically right around the corner. It's going to change everything. It's going to do everything. And that's the story that keeps the money flowing. I'm going to go back to one of the slides because like there is a quote from who is called...
Here we are.
Not you, girl. I'm so sorry. There we go. There is a quote from who is called the father of artificial intelligence, John McCarthy. He coined the term AI in 1956. And he said, literally, look it up. There is a whole interview of him saying this on TV. I invented the term artificial intelligence because I needed some money for a summer study. That was kind of like the birth of at least the term of artificial intelligence, basically kind of a marketing term that someone used because he was already working on this technology. He wasn't getting the traction that he needed. And so he used a term that got more traction. It's just marketing. So when we're thinking about artificial intelligence, I would say come from a point of view of skepticism when it comes to thinking about all the claims that we're getting around artificial intelligence. Now you're probably wondering, okay, Darlyze, why are we talking about any of this? Like, why is this important when we're thinking about building with care and the AI of the ethics of AI? It's important to think about the tool that you're using and what it actually is and what we are actually saying it's going to perform as prior to us implementing this technology within the systems that we use. So when we're thinking about business, finance, healthcare, we're going to talk a lot about healthcare. When we're thinking about that and implementing these tools, the verbiage that we use to talk about it is going to be incredibly important to how we think about the ethics of the product that we're implementing. So keep that in mind. I would say the story and the science are not always the same thing. All right. Thumbs up if that's super clear. If not, I can talk about it a little bit more, but we'll move on to, okay, we're getting some thumbs up. Excellent. Excellent. Love to see it. All right. So now we'll talk about, boom, who's actually in the room. Why do we need more women in AI? Who is making these decisions for these systems? And we're going to talk about why it's important for you to get involved in the conversation. I want to pause before I talk, before I let Nicole, there we go, talk a little bit. But I want to say that it's incredibly common for people, especially people between like the 20 to 35 to 40 age group, to feel like, I don't know if I want to be involved in this conversation. There's a lot of harm in this technology. There's been a lot of harm for my community, especially if you're a person of color. We've seen the environmental impact as well. I would say not being a part of the conversation is also a part of the problem. So Nicole's going to get into that in a second here. So I'll let her talk and we'll talk a little bit about that after.
It matters because as we start to build, create, grow, as we start to adopt, as we start to adapt, who is making the decision based on those algorithms is going to have a very critical effect to what it impacts, right? What do I mean by that? Well, here's an overview of AI systems, and we're going to get into it in a pretty interesting way. As we consider the different types of AI, we have a narrow focus, something that's very specific. Those are virtual assistants and image recognition, right? We have something a little broader. Machine learning is there to learn and predict tasks. We have general AI, is hypothetical at best. General intelligence and general AI is this idea that these systems become smarter than us. We've seen sort of this evolution with OpenAI's new Strawberry. If you're familiar with it, is O1. And then artificial superintelligence is also theoretical. It's this idea that it takes over the world, and it's the fear that everybody has with, the Terminator. As we kind of see this overview emerge, we see something else. We see themes that begin to sort of come about how the confluence of the data and the information affects our decision making and our decision theory. And so I'll pause here to say, in a super interesting way, I looked up this fun fact on where we're represented. Where are women showing up in this space? And I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to transition to this one. Boom, boom. Women comprise of only 22% of AI talent globally. This is as of 2024. A figure that drops. The figure drops less when we're talking about executives. People like me, we represent women overall. 50+% of the population represent only 15% of the senior executives, only 22% of those working in this space. And that matters because as we take a look at these systems, who is making the decision? Who is making the decision to say what is valid to introduce into those AI systems? What data should be included in those AI systems? What the outcome of this AI system should be? We've seen the impact, the deeper impacts of this environment over and over and over again. So much so that if I were to look up all the different ways, just in a quick Google search, for AI and bias, which we will definitely get into the detail, and we look up the ethical impacts, if we do not have the representation of more than 50+% of the population, just as women, and then we just begin to disaggregate ourselves and say, well, what women? I bet you that number drastically changes. I bet you it does. And I know that because as a Black woman in this space, I promise you it does. When we take a look at how that can help double down on societal biases, how it helps to reinforce societal biases, we begin to see problems emerge. And so I want to get back into the presentation, and then I want to guide you all through a couple really interesting things that I have personally witnessed, that I've personally seen, and we'll get into the rest of the topics. I created this from a World Economic Forum tool a few weeks ago before this presentation. This tool allows me to look at different themes that are kind of emerging that lead us here. And the topic was about AI governance, and you can kind of see it in the core topics. It was navigating the intersection of AI adoption, governance, and population dynamics. That's dead in the center, right? And then what this tool does in the World Economic Forum, it looks for all of this data, for all of these experts. I think they have like 1,500 different experts to do research in this space. They have a generative model that pulls in all the context and all the content to generate this tool. It's very, very interesting. And these are all the confluences of topics that are rippling through our lives right now. When we talk about the complexity, we're talking about issues of civic participation in healthcare and education, all the way over to the other side of all the countries that are now beginning to engage. When we look below, we can take a look at how this is a geopolitical issue and how it may actually affect international security and systemic racism and agile governance and social protection. And you can kind of see how this topic of AI ethics is kind of big, right? It's related to us as human beings, how we interact with systems, how systems interact with us, and who's making the decision for the systems at the outset. And so as we sort of dive into this for the rest of the day, that's how I want you to think about it.
All right. Yes. And if you want to watch this full workshop 100%, you can watch the full workshop. The resources in our Discord, but also on our YouTube. So are we starting to see the importance of us being in the room? 22% is wild. 22% is a very wild and not that big of a number globally. It's shocking in general when you think about the widespread adoption of these tools and who they're supposed to help. Hearing the stories of misuse, environmental impact, it will almost always, first and foremost, affect the minority groups. So people who aren't represented in these spaces. So coming over to the next slide here. Boom. All right, the coded gaze. Nicole talks a lot about representation. So let me give you a research example of what happens when it's missing. Joy is an MIT researcher. I highly recommend you looking her up. Okay, as a grad student, she discovered that facial analysis AI literally could not see her face. She's a Black woman. It worked fine when she put on a white mask. And I need you to like kind of think about that for a second. That's kind of like really wild. Something that is supposed to recognize a face cannot recognize her face until she put on a white face. That experience led her to create Gender Shade, which was a study that she did in 2018. She tested commercial facial analysis systems from IBM, Microsoft, and Face Plus for lighter-skinned men, error rate as low as 1%, right? We spoke about this at work, the human biases that can occur while training AI. Exactly, right? For darker-skinned women, up to 34.7% of an error rate. That's basically a coin flip. It's absolutely ridiculous. She said, for these systems, data is destiny. So if the training data is dominated by one kind of face, one kind of person, one kind of phenotype, the AI will fail quite literally everyone else, right? Period. Excellent. So let's talk about real world harm. Another example. Now, we have a lot of women in this space, and if you're an ally in this space or you don't identify as a woman, these are still important issues that you should be aware of as someone who is in a world of women or people who have female bodies. And so I would highly recommend you show up in these spaces with a high level of empathy and understanding. So we're going to talk about real world harm. All right. So it's not just facial recognition. A study published in Radiology, which is a famous journal in 2024, looked at an FDA-approved AI tool for reading mammograms, about 4,800 women. Black women were 50% more likely to get flagged as suspicious when there was no cancer, 1.5 times the odds of a false positive. So that means more callbacks, more biopsies, more out-of-pocket costs that people can't afford, and a hit to the trust in a system that already underserves Black women. So this isn't a model kind of sitting in a lab somewhere. This is deployed. This is real. This happened. It's reading mammograms right now, and it was getting things wrong. This is what data bias actually looks like. So if your training data doesn't properly represent the people, the actual people that it's saying it needs to serve, the model will be less accurate. So if it's saying that it needs to represent women, then it needs to represent Black women, it needs to represent Asian women, it needs to represent all kinds of women. So this model will be way more accurate. So if it's not accurate, even if you have the best intentions, it won't serve the purpose that you're hoping for. So the system itself learned a pattern from incomplete data and then amplified it. And so this is where we get into bad pattern recognition. All right. So moving on. So this is a pattern, not an accident. So I want to talk through this a little bit carefully because it's, I would say, a fairly important example that I really want to resonate. In 2019, researchers at UC Berkeley looked at an algorithm used across US hospitals, right, affecting millions of patients to decide who gets enrolled in extra care programs. So basically it was like, this person is really sick. Let's give them a dedicated nurse, more check-ins, more support. Sounds good, right? Ideally, that sounds good. The algorithm needed to figure out who's the sickest. It sounds straightforward, but here's the thing. Instead of measuring actual sickness, it measured how much money patients spent on healthcare. So the logic was, if you're spending a lot on healthcare, you must be really sick. And not to say that that's the worst conclusion that you could come to, but it comes with a lot of assumptions. So can we see the problem already? I want to take a moment before I get into what the problems are. Take a moment to get into the chat. This is so true. So many emails. My father's age are all talking about the big C, and it's not necessary in the hands of white doctors. It's not in the hands of white doctors. Exactly. All right. So let's get into what the problems are. Black patients in the US spend less on healthcare. Immigrant patients in the US spend less on healthcare, not because they're healthier, but because of actual real barriers, lower access, less flexible jobs, longer distances to hospitals. And I'm not going to talk about the racism and the ridiculous that comes into civic tech. We're not going to talk about that right now. I could go into it, but we're not. Honestly, in addition to that, decades of distrust in the healthcare system, rooted in things like, and I'll talk about it briefly, but like the Tuskegee experiments. I'll pause it there. I'll pin it there. If you don't know, please do your research. But the algorithm looked at lower spending and went, oh, you must be fine. You don't spend that much money at the hospital, so you're probably not even that sick, or you don't get sick very often. So meanwhile, these patients had 26% more chronic illnesses at the same risk score as white patients. So they were sicker, but the system said that they didn't need help. So when the researchers fixed the shortcut, when they stopped using cost and started using actual useful health indicators, the number of Black patients flagged for extra care nearly tripled. So going from about 18% to almost 47%. So that means more than half of the Black patients who should have been getting extra care were invisible to the system originally because of a shortcut that, honestly, and it's not necessarily always an individual person's fault. I'm sure it seemed reasonable in the room based off of who was in the room. On the surface, it felt reasonable, but carried centuries of inequality inside it. So what does that tell us as builders? The data you choose to use and the thing you choose to optimize for, it's not a technical decision. This is an ethical decision. And sometimes, while a shortcut can look efficient, It's actually encoding harm. Give me a thumbs up if that's making sense, if that's resonating. I'm looking in the chat as well. Yes, yes, yes. Excellent, excellent. Questions. Question. Okay, sometimes we are in the room, but we still aren't being heard. Yes, sometimes we are in the room and we are still not being heard. Oh, not a question, more of a statement. Fair enough. Yes. And that's something that we struggle with, honestly, every day. It's something I struggle with every day. You know, we were talking about this in Melanie's workshop on Sunday about what it feels like to be in a room, to have an opinion, to be a subject matter expert, or just to have a thought because your perspective matters. And having someone kind of run over you or present their idea maybe as their own, or kind of say like, yes, but I was like, don't yes, but my thought was just as important as yours. So learning how to speak up for ourselves, but also how to be advocates for our communities within the spaces that we are in. Exactly. Good call out there. Good call out there. So now, like I said, we're not going to topple all of these biases and solve all the ethics problems in this couple of minutes, honestly, that we have left. We probably have like about 20, maybe 30 minutes that we have left. All right. So, one, I would say take a breath, because it's not our responsibility to fix the entire world, but we can take responsibility for the parts that we have access to, which is the projects that you're building, the products that you're building, the teams that you're involved in. All right. So we covered a lot. You get to decide. Like I said, you get to decide. It's your choice, but we covered a lot, like a lot. So in one word in the chat, I would love to know, what does all of this make you want to do as a builder? Maybe a word or a phrase. It could be like, I want to ask more questions. It could be, I want to slow down. Proactivity. I love that. That's a great word. That is a great word. I love that. Miriam said, that's why I will be bringing only Black people on my team with my app idea. And you know what? More power to you. Love to see it. Love to see it. I want to create more teams.
We have the raise of hands. Someone brave wants to speak. So
Oh, brave.
Please
Please.
unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Were you calling me?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay. So as someone who's worked in healthcare and been a part of a lot of data collection and data analysis, so what you said about, okay, the cost of taking the shortcut, I think I know that there is a breakdown with people who collect the data versus people who interpret the data. It is a fight to get the people who actually do the work and the interventions to want to sit down and understand how to properly collect data so that people can draw insights from them. So unfortunately, a lot of times, cost is a quantitative measure. It is easy to like do the numbers. Qualitative, and as somebody who studied qualitative data analysis and went out in the community and did people don't want to do that because it's hard. Or sometimes lack of skill set, and then people are like, right, trying to help people get better. And so they're focused on making sure that they are using instruments that can be reproduced later, are just it's a fight, right? Because of really scarce resources. So, and a lot of times in healthcare, or at least I know where I am, people who speak data don't speak healthcare. So they pick up so they choose the fields, and they choose like based on what you've been taught, the generic data sets that are out there, and they don't connect that with people. And I don't necessarily, I think it's more of a profession bias over a racial one, right? Because if these fields don't make sense to you, if you don't, map that back to actionably how this affects people, then you just aren't able to do that. So I think training and awareness is a big part of the conversation. Like as we build tools, how we train people to be able to use them the right way, right? Because we can't eliminate bias. All we can do is mitigate it. And you can't, and sometimes you don't know you're taking a shortcut, right? You're just trying to you're just trying to make the dashboard pretty so you don't lose your job. I mean, for lack of a better way to say it.
No, that was a great way to say it. Thank you so much for that. Honestly, I appreciate you coming off mic because you're saying points that we are definitely getting to and that we definitely need to hit on. And I can't wait for Nicole's part to come back in because she's going to talk about that. I would love to know if anyone else had any thoughts because, like I said, this is not a lecture. This is a conversation. And so if you have points of view, especially from your subject matter expertise or from your neck of the woods. Camille, definitely.
I didn't want to interrupt you. I think
Mhm.
it's also a really good point to raise because you might face the same dilemma when you have an idea for your project. And sometimes I think it's very easy to make a shortcut to having data or research and making it say what you want it to say and kind of twisting it in the way. So really good point to keep in mind, and we'll get into that towards the end of this workshop for how you log your sources and activity. Make sure that when you find something or you read something that it's actually with the intent of the person that published whatever you're watching, the report, the video, a study, a data set, to make sure that even unconsciously we don't introduce bias, even if we don't have bad intentions, just because of a misunderstanding or not being part of the field you're trying to solve a problem for. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Excellent. I'm loving this exchange of thoughts and ideas. So this is actually great because now I want to name something that connects everything that we just looked at so far. So we talked about the mammogram study, health algorithm, joy, facial, biases, not, faces not being detected. It's all, I would say, the same underlying problem, and it has a name, the default body problem. All right. And the idea is simple. When you build a system and you don't intentionally design for diversity, the system defaults to whoever made or whoever had the most data or whoever made the data. So in US healthcare, that's usually going to be, honestly, white male patients. Okay. In facial recognition, it's going to be lighter skinned male, white males. Okay. And voice assistants, American English speakers. Okay. When we're not building for that diversity, where is that diversity supposed to show up? All right. There is an author, Caroline Perez, who wrote a whole book about this called Invisible Women. She documents that the default male body is baked basically into everything. Office temperatures are based on the metabolic rate of a 40-year-old white man. All right. Women are freezing at work. If you've worked in an office, I worked at a call center before, it's freezing. I had a heater under my desk. I had blankets on. It's like, why is the temperature always at 50 something, low 60s, and everybody else, the males, in my area are perfectly just fine, right? Crash test dummies were modeled on male bodies for decades, which is why women are 47% more likely to be seriously injured in car crashes. 71% of women who need PPE for their jobs say it wasn't designed for their body. So here's the thing. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's quite literally that nobody in the room thought to ask, who else is going to use this? The data just kind of reflected who was in the room, who was already centered, and the system amplifies that. So the algorithm isn't necessarily the core of the problem. Who built that algorithm? Who was in the room? Who was there to ask any questions? So let me bring this home, right? There's something called like pulse oximeters, right? They're these like little devices. They clip on your finger. They read your oxygen levels, right? Studies going back decades have shown that they're less accurate for darker skin. An 11.7% error rate for Black patients versus 3.6% for white patients. During COVID, that meant Black patients were more likely to have dangerously low oxygen levels masked by the device. The FDA only published new draft guidance to address this in January 2025. 2025, just last year. You know how long ago COVID initially started up? 30 years. All right. So that's how long a known bias in a medical device went unaddressed, because the default body was built in and nobody prioritized fixing it. So here's my question for you. Again, we're asking questions, wanting to hear thoughts. So I genuinely want to hear this from you. Have you ever used a tool that was clearly not designed for you? I have an example. I go to the movie theater a lot. I love movie theaters. In the movie theater, there are bathrooms with those, what do you call it? The automatic washers or the sinks or whatever that you put your hands under. Those sinks cannot recognize my skin color. Do you know how frustrating it is to see someone fairer skin just easily put their hand underneath? And I'm sitting there looking like a jerk, being like, come on, just please allow me to wash my hands. So that's my example. Would love to hear someone else's example. I see Camille, you raised your hand.
Can I just add to that? Not speaking personally for this example, but there was an example I saw a video of with the detection that when doctors were trying to use this to sanitize their hands and like the gloves they were wearing, which were also darker, it was not working. And they were saying it actually could have delayed or has delayed. I don't want to say facts without checking. So let's say it could have delayed like a patient getting surgery because it's just not functioning. So on top of like, it's annoying because it's not performing its function, it's actually dangerous because if you do it in like a healthcare setting and you can't sanitize because the only way to use this thing is to put your hand under, then you have a really big problem for design. So
wow, that's absolutely insane. Default body problem. Anyone else have any examples like that? Maybe voice recognition. Do you know how many times I have wiped my hands on my Yes, I do know because I have done the same. I have given up many times. I'm like, I will just do this somewhere else. This is fine. Forget it. My goodness. Someone else raised their hand, I think.
Yes, me. I do have a situation like that with voice recognition. I've noticed that when me and my friends are talking like into our iPhones, they can't pick up certain things we say, especially when we start speaking in, I guess, more of a slang or more of our accent. But when we speak clear as day, then they pick up everything we say. So it's just crazy hearing all these stories because I didn't realize how much bias is just implemented inside the world.
That's a good point. I go through something similar because I'm Haitian. When I'm talking with my family, I slip into, a very Haitian accent. And so if I'm asking like whatever voice assistant to do something, it can't understand what I'm saying. And so I have to pause what I'm saying to then be like, okay, let me go put myself back in American English brain so that you can understand me. And while that's not necessarily the biggest stressor, it's not just me using these voice assistants. I think about, my aunts, my uncles, grandparents, who are trying to stay in the know with this technology, who are losing mobility, and use these sort of voice assistants on their phones to help them do certain things and access certain things on their phone. The language was exactly. Voice recognition doesn't work for Max and either. Had a few embarrassing moments in Teams meeting where the AI is writing gibberish when it's time. Oh my goodness. Hate when that happens. The algo will not let my game get deployed. Wow, that's insane. But this is what I'm talking about. These are great examples of the default body problem. Okay, so now that we can name the default body problem, Nicole is going to share a story. We're going to get into the next video. Oh, not my laptop saying it's going to die, but I got my charger this time. Don't have to mute myself, but we're going to get into what Nicole is going to say about what happens when nobody on the team names the default body problem. All right. So she helped build a healthcare tool. She's going to be honest about what she missed. And as you watch, ask yourself, if I had been on that team, what would I have asked? All right. So this is the next section. Why not you? AI needs you. All right. So let's get into the next section, which I'll play now. All right.
But we're also going to talk about why I care very much about you engaging and participating in this space. Because of this, the biggest challenge that I think that I found when I ask people, well, why not you? Is that there is a perception of what AI is. And so AI, let me just help you now. When it's about system interaction and problem solving and algorithms, it's also about data. What data is included, what data is not included, who is represented in that data, and how an algorithm, which is a computation that asks you, if I add this, and this, and I rank it, tell me what the outcome is based on prediction, because this thing is more than likely going to be the outcome if we're talking about a machine learning model. As we consider how the confluence of these things works together, we need to ask ourselves why we haven't invited more people who are not technical to the table. And I say that in a very intentional way. I just went through an AI training. It's a certification for a systems assessor with IEEE. And my instructor was actually a PhD who studied at Ohio State, who is now living in Germany. She's incredible. And her background is actually sociology. And at first, I was a little confused because I thought the program was going to be more technical. And then we started diving into the training, and I realized why it was not technical. It made so much more sense to me. We're talking about humans. Full stop. Every single time we talk about AI systems and customer service, the first word is the customer, the second is service. When we talk about healthcare, we're talking about the care of health for humans. When we talk about finance, we're talking about managing the money of humans. And so at every single step of the way, we're talking about humans interacting with systems and how systems interact with people. And the way that those things run is through data. You cannot separate the two. Now the question is, what data? And that's why you matter. When we talk about this challenge, we're talking about diverse contributions. It's more than technology. I think that I found some of the most impactful people to be the sociologists, believe it or not, and to be the attorneys, to be the people who understand the laws and the boundaries of them. I found them to be core literal ethicists that are asking really, really crucial questions about how a system should be used and if it should ever be used that way at all. And that is a profound, profound question that I think is probably the most intelligent question that any of you can ask. So if you think about moving into this space, and we'll get into all the different bias types in a bit, one of the first questions I want you to ask is the system appropriate to begin with? That is a big question, because I keep seeing AI tools proposed everywhere, but no one ever asks why. Like, why do we need that? And did you think about the impact, and who is it impacting? And how did you disaggregate the information for the people who you just impacted? Did you ask them? Did you engage with those populations? That's an ethical question. And this is where we need to be today. And so when we think about this being more than a technical challenge, the AI ethicists and consultants that I've met do have knowledge, but the knowledge is sometimes just about the populations. And I think that's super intriguing. And I'll give you a great example. I was working in the healthcare space, and I'm going to be very intentional, very intentional. And by all means, if anybody has any questions, chime in, because I am here to ask them or answer them. I was working on an application for a hospital, and I'm going to be intentionally discreet about what I'm saying. And this application was built with the latest iOS system at the time. I won't even age it to be intentional. And I remember a moment where I was meeting with some designers, and the designers, I mean, listen, the design was gorgeous. I said, wow, this is absolutely positively beautiful. But the population that we're serving, when I was driving through the community, they don't have the latest iOS devices, because that at the time would have been, you know, a $700 or $800 device, and they're not kicking out that kind of money. So out of curiosity, who is this for? And also, how does it solve the problem? Because the problem we were trying to solve was about infant mortality rates and maternal mortality rates. Then there's this beautiful application with no practical application to the population. So why is it appropriate? Why now? Why this? There were so many other things that we could have done based on the existing tools that were available, but why do we choose that? And, you know, and another really interesting story to kind of dive deeper for y'all, I remember, and I've been guilty of it too, I was building something out, and it was specifically there to target healthcare providers in a medical setting. I won't go too much further in description, but I never asked myself who was going through the medical training. And it was using natural language processing, which requires you to understand tone and dialect and language and, natural language processing. But I never asked myself when we were building these things out whether or not I considered the populations. Did I consider the accents? Did I consider all the other things? I don't know that I did. And as a result, did I build a sound tool that was good for the population, for the people who are under these people's care? That level of intentional thought is what's required from AI governance. And so as we kind of go through this journey together today, that's how I want you to think about it. I want you to kind of suspend and say, oh, what is it? And is it just a credential? It's actually you thinking very, 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 very deeply.
All right. Woo. Like I said, Nicole's going to go there. So, given what we just heard and given what we've learned so far, if you were on that team, you're building a healthcare tool, right? What questions, and this is not rhetorical, I definitely want you to answer in the chat. What questions, if you were in that room, would you have asked just to see if we're creating a well-rounded solution that isn't just for one person, that isn't just for the default body? I'll give you a couple, like a minute or two, to type in the chat. What questions would you ask? And as we get into that, while you're typing, we'll go into the next. Boom. There we go. We're essentially analyzing the system together. It's 104, so I want to leave time for us to get through the ethical risk checklist as well. We were going to do more of a whiteboard, but we'll kind of do it more just in the chat, but essentially asking questions around like, okay, so who is the default user? Who is missing or is harmed? What data or context is missing? And what would we document as builders, right? So put in the chat what question you would ask, or if you want to raise your hand, definitely. We've been doing great with raising our hands. I've been loving the conversation that we've been having as well. But yes, someone raise their hand.
I just feel like I have to say something about this because I've been in this space and I've been in these rooms. I would agree, yes, that sometimes, yes, the thought is, okay, who are we doing this for or why this tool? But unfortunately, in healthcare, a lot of times it's about rapid iteration, right? It's about not necessarily that somebody else isn't developing something that's more thoughtful, but they can't produce it as fast as another vendor can. And so a lot of times those are the people that are chosen, and then because I've also been a part of the ethics conversations, the ethics meetings are had after, right? The ethics conversations are after people have been to patient experience complaining about the thing that doesn't do, or after people in the community have complained about the intervention, right? And then that is when the meetings are held to say, okay, how can we mitigate this? And even when I've worked in defense, it's like, yeah, all these questions are great, but we have a mandate to get this out by, in 90 days. So we're going to push this out of the door and we'll fix it later. And I don't really see, unfortunately, that's not something I see getting better in the age of rapid prototyping, right? Because a lot of times if you can produce something and it looks good enough that it can do something, then the people who make these decisions up top are like, okay, yeah, we're going to go with that. And then, we can have these other discussions later. So I don't know how, and especially, with how AI has made everybody really get in a rush to do things, how we get people to slow down and have those conversations. Like those conversations are had on the academic side. They're not had practical. Like the people who do healthcare day to day are like, okay, this and 9,000 other things before the end of the day. So, and that's why there's always such a big disconnect between what, like I've worked at an academic medical center. So you've got the academics saying, let's do it this way, but you've got vendors, you've got CEOs who've not been on the academic side of anything. And you've got vendors saying, but I can come and I can integrate this into your existing system and we can have this up like next week. And so pushing back from that and saying, let's have a thoughtful conversation, it doesn't work. It never works. Those conversations are had normally after there's a problem. And then, to her think of what she said, well, why why would you build this? The only thing I was saying in my mind while I was listening to that was, but capitalism, but capitalism. I mean, this is why, because you can, because you can build a product and you can convince people that it works. And it works until it doesn't. It works until the problems are pointed out. And unfortunately, that's where we are. And I think until you can continue to train and create a more intentional workforce of people to change the mindset and the conversation, it's the fight. It's a good fight that we go to work and that we work in these spaces, and we just continue to show up and say it, but just understanding that in the age of capitalism, rapid iteration, and the fact that we need the solution now because it's also been a problem for 20 years and we haven't addressed it, means that we push the fastest thing that we can push out of the door to show that we are working on a air quote solution.
These are great points because it begs the question of, first of all, yes, give all the claps. It does beg the question of what's most important at the outset, the solution or the ethics of the solution, essentially. What is the overall goal? And unfortunately, yeah, we do live in a capitalist society where we're rewarded for quick, fast, rapid prototyping, build fast, break it fast, fix it later, ask for forgiveness, don't ask for permission, essentially. And it does make me wonder, is it really that much work to embed? Like, it is work, I know it is, but is it that much work to embed frameworks around, okay, these are the questions I know I need to have or have answered in order to move forward? Like, what's the cost benefit analysis of that risk and reward? Yeah, somebody raised their hand.
I did. There's a few countries also that started doing like AI ethics frameworks and all of that, which should become, standard across the industry. There's a lot of things like the UK, for example, where I'm based, we don't have anything. They don't seem to care. They just want innovation, and they think it's going to slow them down if they have some sort of like protocol for how you should develop technology in general. But yeah, also there's the problem that the technology is moving so fast and we don't have time to do all the regulation, all the laws. So it's kind of like whoever can build the fastest without really caring about the outcomes. But I'm still hopeful it will change in the future, but let's see. In a few years, we can do another workshop and see what happens.
Well, I'm hoping that with workshops like these, this empowers people to continue to be a part of the conversation, because unfortunately, things can't change if we don't bring them up. There is that, I think, predilection or the desire to maybe just be like, kind of throw your hands up, like, oh man, it is kind of what it is at present. We just have to work with what we have. And so by that thought, we don't bring up when, certain things when we probably should, fear of being annoying, especially as women in these spaces. Like, we really sometimes try not to shake the table, but sometimes you got to shake the table. Okay. Especially if you're in the US with this administration, I'm sorry, you're going to have to start shaking the table. Okay. Because if we don't speak up for our communities, if we don't speak up for ourselves, and we're expecting other people to do it for us, but they're expecting you to do it for them, like, okay, somebody has to speak. Somebody has to speak and somebody has to do something. So it does become a sort of dual approach of knowing when, like, yeah, you're 20 against one, you're one person being like, hey, I feel like, we should do this, and they're just like, okay, I hear you, but we can't right now. And I still think that's better than not saying anything at all, because in those conversations, it could be that time when they're just like, you know what, okay, let's do this, let's consider it. And that would not happen if you don't bring it up at all. So I would say that. All right, so we're at 112. All right, we're going to do a whiteboard activity. We're going to skip through that, but these are the questions of which I wanted you to be aware of with that whiteboard activity. But now we're going to go ahead into the next section with Camille. We're going to talk about ethical risks. All right. I've yapped a lot. Now I can drink some water.
Go for it. There was a lot of ways I could have introduced this activity, but I think I'm going to start with reassurance, because we've covered a lot of things. And what was good about this whole discussion we've had is like how we can avoid bias, how like all the different ways it can come in that we don't realize, all the questions we have, how we can be more proactive, vocal about it, and also document it. So that's kind of the idea we have for this challenge, because you're going to be submitting some projects, and a lot of you might use AI, either like you implement an AI solution or you just use AI to help you with, you know, coming up with solution coding, anything like that. Some of you might use agents because we've done an agent workshop also. And there might be things even at a small scale, like a hackathon project, where you can introduce bias without realizing it. So what we wanted to do is incorporate into the judging for your project if you've taken into consideration like ethical risks. So can I share my screen actually? Maybe it might be easier. Really, I can.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. So let me just go ahead to the participant guide. Can you see my screen? Now I should be visible. Cool. So this is the link if you don't have the participant guide, and where you find the judging criteria is here, and we have the 2026 one. So there's a different types of things you'll be judged on. I don't want to do a deep dive into that. We'll do that later on into the ideathon. But I just want to focus your attention on this part here, the rigor, which will take into consideration ethical tech development. So if you thought about like bias, privacy, any exclusion, any limitations of your project. And the way we will do this is, and I think someone asked this in the chat earlier, so I hope that helps, about like, how do I know that my project is, you know, accessible, not discriminating anyone and all of that. So the way we want you to do this is to have a log where you kind of, if you've done essays at universities or you've done any kind of like bibliography or citing your sources for a project, you might be familiar with this. If you do not, hopefully this is clear enough. If not, please raise any questions you have. But basically, we want you to submit this at the end with your project, where you will list your sources and also any risks that you've analyzed with your submission. So we don't want you to fix the risks, we just want you to be aware of them. So that just shows that you're transparent with the documentation, saying like, okay, this is a limitation of my project. This could have like any type of problem, like if it's a technical problem where you're just redirected too many times on the page or something like that, you can log it into that. Today, for the purpose of the workshop, I'm just presenting it from an ethical risk perspective, because this is what we've discussed. So you'll have two logs. You have an evidence log, which is, it can include anything, any sources you've used for building your project. So it can be like articles, reports, data sets, libraries, APIs, videos, technical resources, whatever. I've given an example here. For example, if you've used the WHO mental health report from 2023, you would log it into your evidence log and you'll say what was the purpose of this, like where you've used it, the link to it, who published it, and then also like some notes for us to understand why you picked it or any like thoughts you have on it. So I will send, was this sent? Yeah, Darlyze sent the link in the chat. Please open this and you can make a copy here so you can edit it and have it like as your own. So you can keep doing that throughout the project. It's kind of like an early practice for before you have to do the submission. And then the part we're interested in today is the risk log. So that's where you flag like all the potential issues or areas of concern in your project. So that can be anything, ethical risk, which is what we're trying to do today. Can be technical risks, can be UX with like confusing flows or not super user-friendly, and any like LLM risks or limitations that you might have. So for example, I've put an example here, which was you've used an AI model which might generate biased or inappropriate well-being suggestions for users that are from an underrepresented cultural or socioeconomic background because the training data was not representative enough. So you have to put the severity, it could be low, major, critical, low being the lowest, critical the highest, and a potential fix. So as I said, we don't expect you to fix things, but you could have a look at any other resources online that might address how to fix this issue or something you think could be a potential fix. Or if you fixed it, you can put your fix in there. And the evidences for why you think that could be a good fix. So this way we can see how critical you are about your submission and which risks you have identified. So for anything that's like ethical risk based on this workshop, you might have some ideas of the questions you need to ask yourself. And there's an answer to this question that is like, oh, actually, there might be a problem. You would log it into the risk log. So what I want to do is to take, maybe let's do 5 minutes, because I think I took a lot of time explaining this, where you all populate this line here for evidence log and especially risk log with, based on your ideas or the project you're planning on doing or like a hypothesis of your future project, you put a risk you could already identify or something that could be. So if you're using like an AI, you think maybe I need to look into how it's trained. I need to look at the output or anything like that. It can be whatever you want, really. There's no right or wrong answer. And then when we're done with the 5 minutes, we can come back and share a few examples that we've come up with. Is that clear? How does that sound to everyone?
That sounds good. And maybe we zoom in on your screen a little bit if we can. Yeah,
if I
just
can. Is that?
that's
a big one,
so much better. Yeah, there we go. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so we'll take about 5 minutes to do the activity. If you want to repeat the activity one more time now with everything zoomed in.
So I've clicked on the link in the chat. You can read this later on, hopefully, if you need a refresher. And then for each of the logs, so there's one evidence log, put one source you want to use, for example. Doesn't have to be related to any risk, just like it's a practice for when you have to do it. And then in the risk log, based on your concept or idea for what you're going to build and submit to us, try to identify one area of risk. And if you go here because you're not inspired or you don't really know what to put, we have put some things here. Try to make it an ethical risk if you can. That'll be the best based on everything we've discussed. And I'm also in the chat now. If you're like, I'm lost, what are you talking about? Please help. I will try to help.
Excellent. So we'll take 5 minutes. And even if you're not participating in 75HER, like for our ideathon and hackathon, this is still a great exercise to do. And if you don't have a project in mind, themes that always work: business to healthcare, education. We're aligning a lot of our projects that we're wanting our builders to build around UN SDGs. So gender equality as well, civic tech, all of that. And so if you have, just think creatively. It doesn't have to be something that you're going to publish tomorrow, but use this as a thought exercise. All right. I'll put on a 5-minute timer. I'll also put on a song because that's always good as well. Don't be nervous about filling this out. Don't be like, oh, I'm not going to do this. Not me getting homework right now. You are getting homework, but it's now work. Okay. All right. 5 minutes on the clock. And let me get some music.
I'll stop presenting, but
yeah,
still the chat if you need.
Perfect. All right. And I will share. We're going to start Tim's over for this. Oops. All right. Let's do window.
to fight for my yearnings. Fear in my mind is a warning. Pray to the one you're relying. I've been wandering all day. I tried to be fine, but I can't be. The noise in my mind wouldn't leave me. I tried to get by, but I'm burning. I'm behind my mind, it runs. All these thoughts have troubled me. Fighting to give up my pain. Fighting to be on my lane. My mind running to the other side. When it's time to leave my life, then it tries to take me out. Tell you what I need, right? Yeah, I really need time now. I need a free mind now. I really need more now. I need to free my mind now. I really need time now. I need to free mind now. I really need mine now. Yeah. This is the peace that you cannot buy. Send me a love that you cannot mix. One is the joy that you cannot waste, and the other one price that you cannot fix. This is the peace that you cannot buy. Finding a way when you cannot see. Man with this system, you cannot pray. I need to find release. But behind my mind, it runs. All these thoughts have trouble me. Fighting to give up my pain. Fighting to be on my lane. My mind running to the other side. When it's time to leave my life, then it tries to take me out. Tell you what I need, right? Yeah, I really need more now. I need a free mind now. I really need time now. I need to free my mind now. I really need time now. I need a free mind now. I really need time now. Oh yeah, just let me free, freer than the open mind, farther than the eyes can handle, freer than the ocean now. Yeah, yeah, so set me free. Now I need to find release. Set me to the open sky. Now I need to free my mind. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Hey, I don't, yeah, oh no. I might be falling deep. 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 Tell me now what you need. I've been going to God when I'm only in my mind. I might be falling deep. Falling deep. I might be falling. I might be falling. I might be falling. I might be falling, yeah.
All right. I got a couple seconds left, but hopefully everyone is just about done. Give me some thumbs up, and if you were able to complete the exercise, I hope you were done. Okay, great. How so you got access? Okay. Give some thumbs up if you're able to complete the exercise, and that's our timer. Excellent. I hope everyone else did too. I hope you weren't nervous about completing the exercise or you didn't want homework. Sorry, you're at CreateHER Fest. You get homework. You get your work. I'm not sorry. All right, excellent. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so who wants to share? Who wants to share some risks? I will do the teacher thing and call on someone because I saw who put their thumbs up. I will do it. Okay, we're doing it. You forced my hand. All right, who put their thumbs up? I saw Nia. Nia, you put your thumb up. If you're able to share what you did, what were the risks that you noted in your ethical risk checklist?
So I used like a project that I was personally working on, and some of the risks I noticed was bias. It's a women's health app, so I noticed the bias in information, like not being able to find a lot of information on the specific subject surrounding hormones and cycle.
Mm.
So I don't know how to word that. I guess it would be like the lack of information because studies aren't done on women. That's a bias that's before that could become a risk when you're trying to train AI and give it proper information to answer questions correctly or prompts correctly, but there's no information from it to pull from. So
That's a great example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give Nia some claps for being brave enough to come off mic.
It's Naya. Thank you.
Oh, Naya. Okay, thank you for correcting me, because child, the way people mispronounce my name all the time. I got Daryl once. Anyway.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much. All right, does anyone else want to share before we, close out pretty much soon? No? I won't call out just because I know we're coming up on time, but I will share my screen to close us out pretty soon. First of all, if you've made it this far, congrats. I'm super, super proud of you for participating in this. Wait, what tab are you sharing? Sorry, present something else. I do want to say I'm super proud of everyone for participating in this experience. This work isn't easy, and these questions do require us to think outside of ourselves and extend empathy as well, and to also question standards that have been in place for a very, very long time. So I did drop the feedback form in the chat. So if you are enjoying this workshop, please fill it out. As I close out, I will say ethical AI is not something that you build, or it's not something that happens. Even though it does happen, it shouldn't happen after you build. We should take that into consideration before we build, especially for the projects that you're doing for CreateHER Fest. You do have the time to sort of think through, okay, what is ethical? What are the risks around the things that I want to build? This is a sort of leadership skill as well. So it's going to show up in what you pay attention to, who you design for, and what you're honest about in your documentation. So your lived experience is not an add-on, it is the missing piece. So as women, as people in these bodies and people from communities that AI has historically ignored or harmed, your lived experience is not an add-on, okay? So when you ask who is left out, that's not negativity, that's not being nosy, that's not being a stick in the mud, okay? That's not you being difficult. That's literally how we build better systems, asking these questions. So I want to leave you with something that Karen House said at the end of her book, which I highly, highly recommend you reading. It's called Empire of AI. But that really stuck with me. And she says, hopefully I have it on this next slide. Okay, great. This particular path of AI development was not inevitable. The creation of these empires was not inevitable. And the path we're going to write for ourselves is still within our hands. So it's very easy to feel very doomsday about where AI is going. And it's just it's too late to get involved. It's too late to learn this stuff. It's too late to even become a subject matter expert on this stuff and be able to participate in these conversations. It is not too late. You still have time as you participate in workshops like these. You participate in the hackathon, ideathon, you participate in the conversations on LinkedIn within our Discord. Continue to participate, okay? It is not too late. The path we're going to write for ourselves is literally quite still within our hands. So what's next? Complete your ethical risk checklist for your project idea if you are participating in 75her, or if you are building a product or a project, share it with your teammates. If you haven't formed your team for the Ideathon and Hackathon, highly recommend going ahead and starting now. Mentors are also available. If you have an idea that you're like, okay, how do I think about feasibility and technicality and the ethics of it all? How do I make this work? Mentors are available this week, so please book time. It is on our website, createherfest.com/75her-challenge. And include this ethical risk, like the log and your README or your pitch deck. I promise you, the judges will be incredibly impressed with the fact that you even thought about this. This is something, as we implement this is not something that is typically implemented in other hackathons. You do have a leg up in the fact that we are making this a thing for our hackathon. And it goes to show, like when you're, applying for jobs, when you're applying for fellowships, when you're applying to programs, like being able to speak to the fact that that is something at top of mind. And not only do you think about it, but you think about it systematically. Highly, highly recommend putting that at the forefront of like your cover letters, resumes, as a skill that you have acquired, that you are acquiring, especially here with us. All right. So first of all, thank you so much. Please fill out our feedback form. Let myself and Camille know how we did, so we can improve, so we can continue to provide these kind of workshops. Just let us know how we did. And it is Tuesday. It is 1:30 p.m. Eastern. It is probably still cold and or raining and or gray wherever you are, but I hope that we left you. I feel better, honestly. I still feel tired, and I see my client in here and I owe her an email and a lot of work. And so it's like, I need to get off this call and get to that. But I'm so grateful for the space that we all shared today. And I'm so excited to see what you all build with what you learned today. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, I just realized it wasn't even showing the right.
Need to show the feedback.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. It wasn't even showing the right thing. Got too many tabs open. Excellent. Yeah. There we go. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Excellent. Oh, yes. And we do have other workshops this week. We have one with, I believe, JP Morgan and Chase. So please check out our event schedule as well on Thursday. So if you are interested more on the business and the marketing side of things, if you're, planning or already in the throes of founding like a startup, if you're thinking that you want to take the idea that you're building for CreateHER Fest to that sort of startup founding route, that's going to be a great workshop to attend. So highly recommend registering for that as well, with our partners at JP Morgan and Chase. All right, thank you all. Have a good rest of your day. All right, let's stop the recording now. Excellent.